Well, hello, Voices United colleagues. My name is Matt Hill, and it is my pleasure to be with you to have some conversation about best practices for community choirs. There will be two presentations. One focuses on the artistry and how we deliver that, how we as conductors can maximize our role as the artistic leaders. And the second component is business practices, operational policies, things that sort of serve as the foundation for the artistic work that we do. So my hope, however, is that there are going to be some principles here that are applicable for scholastic choirs, for church choirs maybe as well. There are some underlying principles that I think are applicable outside of the community choir realm, but this will really focus on some of the business components that I think are more appropriate for community-based ensembles than for school groups. But hopefully many people can take some good content away here. So thanks very much to the committee for inviting me to participate. It's absolutely my pleasure to be with you. Even though we're doing this virtually and asynchronously, I look forward to connecting with some of you and welcome you. I'll do this again, but would welcome you to reach out if you have questions or other thoughts or great ideas that you could share with me that I could consider implementing. And I just love that connection and that fellowship with other choral directors. So be in touch, please. It would be great to meet you and to connect with you. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of who I am. I founded an organization called Sing Omaha in 2007. It started with one choir and has grown to 8 age-specific groups, kindergarten through second grade, in 2 locations in the Omaha area, 3rd through 6th, also in those same 2 locations, 2 7th through 12th grade auditioned ensembles, a girls' choir and a boys' choir, and 2 adult ensembles, 1 mixed and 1 women's. We do a 4-concert season for the older students and our adults, fewer concerts for the younger groups in tiers. The organization started with 1 adult choir and grew from there. The idea was hatched in my living room, so I had to learn many things the hard way, and I'm hopeful that maybe through some of those experiences, I might be able to save you some of the same cuts and bruises that I had as you are either getting ready to start or in the midst of operating and maybe trying to grow a community choir organization. I also serve as Director of Choral Activities at Peru State, which is a small college in southeast Nebraska. So I'm living in the collegiate world as well. I do music ministry, as I'm sure many of you do, as part-time work. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve as the National Community Choirs R&R Chair for ACDA. So just to give you a little bit of background about how I came to this presentation and the experience, 15 years that I bring to bear in the community choir world, which I hope is going to be helpful to some of you. So I think the community choir is perhaps the most important vessel for the continued growth of choral music in America. Many singers leave their choir after high school or undergrad, meaning that people are, from 22 to 92 are without an activity that was crucial to their developmental experiences for the majority of their lives up to that point. As church choirs are waning around the country, community choirs seem to me to be the last and best vehicle for keeping singers and audiences engaged with choral music. If we accept that premise, then the next question should be, how do we make this experience the best that it can be for everyone involved? Traditionally, community choirs have been predominantly social-oriented organizations who use their musicals as a vehicle for a club-like atmosphere. If this is the case for you and for your choir, I might consider making a small shift to intentionally focused on a higher level of artistry. We all want that, and sometimes the social component takes over in a way that may be healthy socially and for the culture of the organization, but that might stifle the artistic opportunities in those groups. We all know that excellence is attractive. It's true in the arts, it's true in athletics, it's true in academics, it's true in our professional lives. We want to be around excellence, and we want to participate and contribute to that. So in our case, I think good repertoire paired with intentional musicianship and rehearsal can translate to moving and meaningful artistic experiences for you and for your singers and for your audiences. But the big question is, in the community choir world, how do we accomplish this with just 1 rehearsal a week? I have some practical tools that I think you can employ next season to help increase your attendance, increase the buy-in, increase your rehearsal efficiency, singer accountability, raise your artistic standards, and hopefully improve the overall enjoyment of the community choir experience for singers, pianists, yourself, audiences, the community at large, which is really our mission as community choirs, I think, in many ways. the truth here is that all of this begins and ends with us as the conductor, artistic director, person. Most of us, I think, are uncomfortable with the ego that's sort of associated with that. But the fact is that the choir lives or dies based on our work, on our vision, on our willingness to delegate responsibilities, to carry the burden of ensuring that the artistry and the underlying business components are sound so that the singers can come and do what they do, enjoy making music and contributing to an artistic experience that they can't create on their own, which is one of the most beautiful things about choir, I think, is that we have to have other people to do it. So how do we ensure that we can work effectively and efficiently in our truncated rehearsal environment with our other jobs? Many of us have other jobs who are doing community choirs, our family obligations, our social lives, which post-COVID I think are hopefully coming back, our professional obligations, and then other personal things in our lives that weigh on our hearts, on our minds, and on our schedules. So the first part of this two-part presentation is going to be artistic considerations. So I'm hoping to give you some practical takeaways. You may disagree with some of what I share. These are things that have worked for me. I would love to know if you disagree, if you've got something that has worked better for you, please share that with me. I'm always excited to learn from people who are doing this as well. We're all living it together. So I'm going to share what I've learned in 15 years and would love to know what you've learned during your career too. So the first thing for me is to hire a great pianist. Not a good one. You need to hire a great pianist, somebody who is with you in rehearsal, who can read your mind, who can cover parts that might be struggling without you having to ask for it. It's sort of like buying ice cream. You know, good ice cream is okay, but why? If you're going to spend the money and you're going to have the sugar, then buy the top shelf ice cream, right? It's the same thing for me with a pianist. Hire a great pianist. It's worth the money, and it's worth your collaborative experience to have a peer at the keyboard who can help to facilitate rehearsals with you. The next thing is to choose great music. I mean, this sounds kind of like a no-brainer, but I think that great music can elevate an average choir to being an excellent choir. And mediocre repertoire will take a great choir and make them average, or maybe worse. And I think those factors include, first and foremost, relatable text, right? That tells me who the composer is and what their level of discernment is as they're going through their creative process. I think the repertoire needs to have at least one goosebumps moment, which doesn't mean fortissimo necessarily, but there has to be something that's attractive to you as the conductor that will then, of course, be equally attractive to singers and to audiences. If it's not moving you, it's not going to move them for a lot of reasons. Maybe it's a deficiency in the piece, but it's also they can tell that you're not invested. So you've got to find those wow moments. I would also encourage an effort to strive for a balance of feel on each program. Choirs need to be challenged, but they also need to feel successful. So choosing a mix of titles that achieve those goals. And here's a little breakdown. 10 to 20% of the program should be what I call just add water pieces. These are things that are easy, they're quickly learned, maybe one rehearsal, something maybe that you could teach by rote or that's very easily read. They feel good about that. It allows them to do some tone work, some phrasing work to sound like an ensemble without having to employ a bunch of music theory and sight reading and fundamental musicianship things. The majority, 60 to 70% of the music that you choose should be at the choir's difficulty level, meet them where they are. So it should be challenging, but doable, something that you're confident they can accomplish. And the final 10 to 20% should be above the choir's current difficulty level. This is music that's going to take time to learn because of its technical difficulty. Maybe it's a diction thing. You're singing in a language that they're not accustomed to. Divisi is certainly a factor depending on the size of the ensemble and the leadership you have in the sections. The duration of the piece, sometimes stamina is a thing that we have to consider. Tessitura in individual sections, those kinds of things. And I would consider introducing these titles 1 or 2 concerts in advance. So give them something in the fall that maybe you don't intend to sing until the spring. It just lets them sort of digest this a little bit. Even if all you do is introduce it and spend a few minutes getting a foothold in the fall semester, it's going to be less daunting for everybody when you put it in their folders and tell them that it's coming on the March show when you resume rehearsals in January. I think achieving this balance of difficulty in your repertoire can allow you to pace your rehearsals as well, so that singers get a sense of confidence in their work paired with a meaningful challenge that elevates them individually and collectively as an ensemble. The second thing would be maybe to consider theming your concerts. The there are pros and cons to this, of course. Programming to a theme can pose challenges, but I think it has a ton of benefits. Choirs and audiences understand that there's an overarching idea or story within a concert. It's generally easier to create promotional materials. Posters or social media images are huge, obviously. Your concert program, it can look nice, and it's faster, I think, to come up with a striking image if you've got a theme versus just a generic title. I would also, just as an aside here, make sure that everything you're producing in terms of promo material has your logo on it. That seems like maybe a silly thing to say, but I see a lot of choirs who share things, which is a lovely title and a beautiful poster, and it's got the date and time of the concert and maybe the name of the choir, but there's no branding there. So we'll talk about branding in part 2, but just make sure that that's there. So themes can be really helpful, I think. Sometimes they're maybe a little bit more challenging to find repertoire that fits a theme. So experiment with that and build a list of potential themes, maybe in a spreadsheet, and then just start populating it with titles that you think might work for your choir or choirs. That said, I would avoid theming a full season unless the theme is an anniversary celebration or something like that. The problem is that a season theme over 3 or 4 concerts really hems you in, both on the repertoire side and in terms of your concert promotion. It's hard to make those images look differently on your promo pieces. So I don't love the season theme concept personally. If you've done that successfully, I would love to know how you did it and what you did. I've just not seen that employed successfully. However, I do think that branding an annual concert is a great idea. So at Sing Omaha, our Christmas concert is called a Christmas fanfare. It includes all of our 8 choirs with a brass quintet or octet, depending on the music that I'm choosing. And percussionists. And we do this every year. There's plenty of music that will fit that theme. I had a separate logo designed for this concert, which includes our logo, which you can see behind me. But the Christmas fanfare logo is the same. And then the program and poster image changes every year, but that branded experience is the same. This allows for expectations for the audience to be consistent. They know what they're walking into every Christmas, and the holiday concert really seems like a no-brainer. But maybe you do a March Pops concert and you come up with a title that can be used every year, and then a subtitle that identifies the specific, whether you're doing a 90s show or we did a pop show once called Icons, which was featuring solo artists that were well-known in their music. So that I think is wise. It also makes it a little easier for you from a creative standpoint. If you are an organization that does a holiday concert every year, you know you're going to do one. There's no sense in coming up with a creative title for a December show every year. Just call it something. At Peru State, we call ours the Magic of Christmas, and it's the magic of Christmas every year. But I have as much repertoire flexibility with that as I do any other concert. So that is something that I do think is worth considering. This again might seem like sort of a no-brainer thing, but it's important, I think, as a discipline for us as conductors to make a rehearsal plan. Every minute counts. So begin by singing, not doing announcements. Begin by singing. The first thing to do is to sing. This establishes for you and for the members of the ensemble that music making is the primary purpose of your gathering. People sing in community choirs for many reasons, and not all of those are artistic, but singing should be the cornerstone of your gathering, and the social engagement that follows is then based on a mutual desire to make great art. The second thing is that warm-ups must be meaningful, not simply habitual. We all sort of fall into a rut, I think. I'm certainly guilty of that, of just doing the same kinds of things. I would challenge you to focus on building tone first. These are generally people in community choirs who aren't singing every day. They see you, and that's the time they sing. They may sing in their church. They might do the off wedding or karaoke or something. But for the most part, the primary artistic experience that they're having as singers is with you. So build that instrument first. I would use repertoire from the folder that you're singing to warm up the ensemble's listening. And you also get the bonus of rehearsing a portion of that rep. So you're doing a little double duty there, which can be helpful. Another resource to be aware of is Robert Shaw's warm-ups. All of them with sheet music and sound samples are available on his website. If you're sort of in the wilderness here, as it were, in terms of useful warm-ups, I would go there, start there. I mean, if it was good enough for Shaw, then it's good enough for me, is how I feel. So that would be a great place. And if you have your own tried and true warm-ups, I think that's great. I would challenge you to do a self-evaluation of those warm-ups though. See if you can identify their intended purpose and see if you can then identify whether or not you're achieving that purpose with those warm-ups. If one or the other, either the purpose or its actual result doesn't measure up to your expectation, I would consider amending them or replacing them. I mean, habit is great and structure is great, but falling into a rut is not, particularly if it's doing a disservice to the building of the ensemble's ear or their technical ability as singers. It's not really serving us. So zoom out, take a critical look. Just because your college choir did it doesn't mean it's the right thing for you now. And that's true for me as well. I think we need to constantly be evaluating. I also think that the intro or the use of the term warm up is kind of a misnomer, isn't it? I mean, unless we're singing at 8 in the morning, voices are warm. What we're really trying to do is shift the mindset that the voice is used differently for singing than it is for speech. So talking about tone production, talking about embouchure, talking about breath, talking about color, I think those are really important versus just sort of getting the car started when it's cold. That's not what we're trying to accomplish, I don't think. The next thing is to know where in the music you intend to begin. The beginning of a piece is rarely a great place to start. It's usually unison or one or two voices. There's no real meat there. So I would find a homophonic section or a melody that somebody gets to sing at some point in the piece. So maybe at the beginning it's sopranos and altos singing an 8-bar melody that the tenors and basses sing on page 4. Well, they're gonna have to sing it anyway. So tenors and basses sing the alto line down the octave and everybody begin here. And maybe do that on a neutral syllable. If you want something warm, sing it on an LOH. If it's a percussive thing, choose something with a hard consonant. To maybe would be good there. Next, please avoid piano intros and interludes in rehearsal. It's just a waste of time. Your pianist doesn't need the rehearsal, and the singers are going to be able to count when it counts. Sorry for the double usage there, but we burn a ton of rehearsal time. I think, okay, let's start at measure 1, and then the pianist plays a beautiful introduction, but it doesn't help us, and it's probably not helping the pianist too much either. They get it. So the next consideration, and this is something that I'm sure we all do to one degree or another, but let's make sure that we're teaching sequentially. Singers learn more effectively when they're focused on only 1 or 2 of the 3 elements of music, those being lyrics, rhythm, and pitches. So I would start by learning on a neutral syllable. Choose a syllable that matches the tone color of the piece, which we just spoke about. Then I would speak the text in rhythm. So you've omitted the notes now, we're speaking the text in rhythm. We're focusing on 2 things at a time. And once we've done those 2 pairs, pitches and rhythms on a syllable, then lyrics and rhythm with no pitches, then we can add all 3 together. That really increases efficiency and comfort for my singers. Another consideration is to float sections to help others. If the altos have a 16-bar line by themselves and the sopranos aren't singing, it seems a little silly to me. I think we're wasting the voices. Now we need to be conscious of balance and of timbre, of course. So maybe it's just soprano 2s drop down and sing with the altos, but I think it doesn't hurt us to consider floating. If the tenors are a little bit smaller section and they're singing in an alto-ish range, and the altos aren't doing anything, or maybe the altos are singing a unison line and we can float a couple alto 2s down to help tenors out. It changes the timbre a little bit, which can really be beautiful, so long as you're intentional about it. And it can certainly boost volume if you're looking for balance. So I'm sure everybody does this, but just don't be afraid to do it is the point. Be strategic about how you do that. Baritones and falsetto can certainly help tenors. It's actually nicer to have the baritones help the altos if you're looking for something a little light up there. So just be considerate of that. Another consideration that I have found is to share announcements at the midpoint of your rehearsal before you dismiss for break, or if you don't have a break and that's going to be it, use announcements as a break point in the middle of the rehearsal. Starting with announcements just is sort of it feels like a false start, and doing it at the end, everybody's packing up and they're ready to go. So anything that needs to be shared with the group, I think is best shared at the midpoint of rehearsal. It's even better, I think, if you can delegate announcements to your pianist or to a leader if you have section leaders or choir officers. It doesn't necessarily have to always be you, and that sort of frees you up to be getting the next piece out and preparing for the next segment of your rehearsal, whether that's going to be sectionals or a deep dive into new diction, or you're handing out a new piece, whatever that's going to be. If you do take a break, recognize that it's not really a break for you, in my opinion. I don't perceive that as being a break for me. It's really an opportunity for me to answer questions, musical questions, or for people to let me know that they're going to be absent the next week, or those kinds of conversations happen at that time. If there's nothing musical required of you, I would encourage you to make a point to interact with every singer in the room during the break. Go up and shake a hand, put a hand on a shoulder, say hello, great to see you. It doesn't take more than about 8 seconds, but having that eye contact, having that one-on-one, or if they're standing in a circle chatting, going over and participating for a minute really goes a long way in letting them know that you're invested in them beyond there being a singer in the group. The dividends pay so much more than what you're investing there. Choir officers, I'm sure some of you have these, and in community choirs, I would love to know how you're using them. I don't have officers in my community choirs because we don't really have a need for that kind of leadership. I am going to institute a section leader in each of my sections in the 2 adult groups at Sing Omaha this fall, which is really an accountability mechanism. They're going to take attendance for me, which is helpful, but they're also going to be responsible for memory checks with me. And once they've achieved that memory check with me, then they're going to be responsible for doing memory checks the rest of the sections. It prevents me from having to pull quartets down and ask people to sing alone, which community singers don't want to do, but it ensures that people recognize that there is a level of accountability to the music, which I think is important. We do have a social event chair here at Sing Omaha in the 2 adult groups, which is helpful. They coordinate a summer barbecue. We have a minor league baseball team here in town. So occasionally they'll go get a group together and get a group rate and go sit in left field and hang out, bring families for the evening. So having somebody who can kind of coordinate that is great. And I go and participate, but it's one less administrative thing that I have to do. So that might be something you'd like to consider. And we also have toyed with a social media person. This is primarily for your social media groups, your private groups for your choirs. This helps to ensure that new singers get added to the group. And then I ask that person to do 1 or 2 pieces of fun content every week, whether it's a little blog post or a YouTube video with a silly warm up or something serious, right? A nice performance video of a piece that we have done in the past or that they are petitioning me to do. Just something to keep activity going in the group is nice, so that it's not just an announcements repository. And that can certainly be something you do, but it's also something that more than one person in your choir would be enthusiastic to jump in and help with. So consider what your leadership structure looks like in your ensembles. The next section calls for me is extending the experience. This includes the use of performance or electronic tools. So I would share performance recordings of choirs whose sound you like. Your singer's impression of tone color, interpretation, pronunciations are going to be influenced by what they hear. So you want to choose carefully, but if you give them a great recording who you'd like them to model after, whether you tell them that or not, they're going to. So be conscientious about that. I would also consider making part recordings available online, whether it's the accompaniment and then a piano played over, or if you want to sing the parts or have section leaders sing the parts. Making those available for people who are non-vocational musicians is huge. Put them online on a private page on your website or post in a private Facebook group. And then ask them to use them, ask them to rehearse. Another cool thing that we have found to be valuable here is for me as the conductor to upload scanned PDFs of my marked scores, which mark entrances and releases, diction notes, dynamics, tone color ideas, and then ask the singers to transfer those markings into their scores between rehearsals. That can really save time. And then utilize those social media groups for questions between rehearsals, especially if you have section leaders and you don't have to be the only one answering questions. It can be nice. It's great for social engagement as well, of course, but it's a really practical way of facilitating music learning between your weekly rehearsals. You can also post your weekly rehearsal plan there on the day of the rehearsal so that they come prepared. And this is useful for singers who have to miss a rehearsal too. It can serve kind of as a guide to their personal practice time so that they are as close to caught up as they can be when they return, which is huge, as you know, when they only get to sing once a week. The next piece is enhancing the experience. So we've extended it beyond the rehearsal, and now we're going to enhance the experience. I would encourage you strongly to do at least 1 extended retreat a year. 2, I think, is better, but 1 for sure in the fall to host a half-day or a full-day retreat. If it's possible to do this in early February as well to kick off the spring semester, that's really good, but for sure do it in August or September. In either case, schedule the retreat for 2 or 3 weeks after rehearsals are underway so that any changes in personnel have been settled and so that the music is at least a little bit familiar to the singers. That's going to make your extended rehearsal time that much more productive. For us, a Saturday from 9 to 4 works well. A Sunday afternoon from 1 to 5 or 6, 7 o'clock, if you're going to do a meal, can be helpful. I would put a singer in charge of a Google sign-up sheet or something to assign food. A few main dishes are usually more than sufficient if you're going to do a potluck kind of a thing. And then drinks, desserts, snacks, that kind of stuff, cutlery, paper plates, bottled water, however you do that. This is not science, of course, but just making sure that all those bases are covered. And I always supply the cutlery and the paper plates and the water, and then everybody else is responsible for the other stuff. These experiences are equally musical and social. Unlike musical weekly rehearsals for us, which are 80% music and 20% social, these are more 50-50 because we have the time to invest. Great in the fall for getting to know you, breakout sections. You can do extended sectional work there. They've got the time. And they like it. They want this experience. They like to hang out. They want to get to know each other. And they're enthusiastic about that early on as much as they are about the music. So it's precisely because of this experience that you can afford to be a little more business oriented in your weekly rehearsal. If you get some of the social things embedded early on in an early season retreat. Getting to know you games, of course, there's 1,000 of those online to look at. It's a great time in a retreat to talk about your philosophy, to lay out the season, introduce everybody, highlighting new singers, of course. It's also a great time to share some history about your choir or your organization, share your vision and dreams for this season and for the coming years. This galvanizes veterans around you again and sort of points everybody in the same direction. And it engages new singers, lets them know that this is more than just a concert to concert thing for them and for you, that there is a longer range experience here. The next thing I would consider would be to collaborate. Connecting with local high school choirs is so easy and they are way up for it. If you reach out and make good connections with high school choir directors, maybe some of you who are doing community choir are also high school choir directors, the no-brainer. Maybe collaborate together to bring in a guest composer and share a concert together. You don't necessarily have to commission something, but pay to fly them in for a couple days and then do a concert that features some of their music. You need to be strategic about who that is, obviously, and what kind of rep you choose. But you could get together with a community orchestra or a pro orchestra in town to do a major choral orchestral work. And then if I were you, I would volunteer to recruit other choirs if it's necessary, depending on the rep that you're going to do. And then go bring some high school choirs in. They can do Mozart Requiem, no problem. Maybe host a festival or travel to one, do a community choir festival and get together with other community choirs. They love performing for each other and they rarely get to see peer groups, in my experience anyway. So especially if there are community choirs within reasonable geographic distance to you, I would love to see some of that. And in my role as National Community Choirs R&R for ACDA, that's going to be a big push for me, is to try to help to facilitate that for people. This might be a little intimidating, but gosh, I don't want it to be. Consider getting good recordings and auditioning your community choirs for state, regional, and national conferences. They need to get out, and people need to see that great music making can happen beyond high school and college, that non-vocational and maybe sometimes vocational musicians can still make really great art together. I think it's important for the choral community and for the community at large to see that, and I think conferences are the best stage, literally and figuratively, for that. So really give that some consideration. Don't think that you're not good enough. Don't make that decision on behalf of the committee. Put yourself out there. And then if you are not invited, I would ask for feedback and take the constructive criticism and then weigh it and apply what you think is appropriate to improve. And then the last thing we all sort of know is to maybe go on a tour. It doesn't have to be expensive. But you know, major music tour agencies, and they've all got packages for you to travel within the US or abroad. I'm not saying you have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars and go spend 2 weeks in Europe, but you could maybe travel to a neighboring state or a couple states away and get to a major metro area, something where there are sightseeing opportunities, where they'll obviously make it performance oriented, see if there's a group that could host you for a concert. And then of course there are multi-choir festivals you can sign up for too. But I know that this takes some planning, some fundraising, some coordination. Singers have to get time off work. It's not like a college where you can just excuse them from class and go. But even though you're not likely to get 100% of people on board, if you can get 70 or 80% on board, it is an absolutely wonderful experience and one that they're going to talk about for years after the fact. Really give that some thought. Finally, as we wrap up this section about artistry, I heard this once and I can't attribute the quote. It's not mine, but your standards become what you're willing to accept. I really want you to think about that. People know they sort of feel you out, and they get to know where your line is. So it's important, I think, that we only accept greatness from ourselves and from those around us. And you have to define what greatness is. But then you need to be uncompromising in that expectation. You need to remember that you, as the conductor, are the driving force behind everything that happens in your ensembles. So cast a vision, make a plan, be prepared. They'll smell you out if you're not, and be focused on great art. They will love you for that. The world of community choirs is so diverse. The kinds of music that we get to make, the kinds of singers that we are engaged with, the audience expectations, the metropolitan areas where we work, nothing is the same beyond the fact that we're generally working with non-vocational musicians in a once-a-week setting. So I don't expect your experiences to look exactly like mine, but I'm hopeful that some of the things that I've shared in this presentation are either reminders to you about things that you used to do, affirmation for you about things that you're currently employing, or maybe something new that you hadn't considered that you might be interested in trying. I hope that that's true and that you've been able to derive some value from this. I would encourage you again, please, to feel free to be in touch with me. If I can answer questions or be of assistance, I'd be happy to zoom into a rehearsal. I'd be happy to meet with your choir leadership. All of that, of course, is for free. I am so excited about community choirs in the United States and the potential that we have to be a driving force behind the continued growth of choral music in our country. And I'm happy to do anything that would be appropriate to help you in your endeavor to help us fulfill that mission. So please feel free to be in touch. If I can answer any questions or if I can be of assistance. My website is in the bottom left-hand corner of all these slides. Pretty easy to find on social media. So reach out if I can be of help. And I hope you'll tune into part 2, which is about healthy operational policies, how we sort of build the business infrastructure to make the art really shine. So thanks once again for the invitation. Thank you to the committee for inviting me. Thank you for watching. It was my pleasure to be here and to share with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations and the interaction that comes with this conference experience. Thanks so much.